These are the best settings that pro players are using for Counter-Strike 2. We will look at donk, m0NESY, and w0nderful to see what settings they use to win. Valve has been updating the video settings page, which made players ask what are the new best settings. So let's start with donk. After Valve made changes, donk shared what his video settings were, which is boost contrast enabled, G-Sync, vsync, and reflex all off, 400 and 200 for max FPS, 8x MSAA, high global shadows, all dynamic shadows, low model textures, trilinear, low, disabled, quality, and then highest quality. Overall, it seems like he just focuses on FPS with a few settings on like shadows. When you use his full video settings like full screen, 4:3, 1280, 960, your game looks something like this. m0NESY though has a few differences for his settings. He showed them last week, which has a similar full screen 4:3 resolution, but for boost player contrast, it's disabled, while donk has it enabled. Vsync, G-Sync, and reflex are off, so while Valve recommends it for casual players, pros seem to not be using that combo. Max FPS 0 and 200, 8x MSAA, high global shadows, all dynamic shadows, low models, bilinear instead of donk's trilinear, low, high ambient occlusion, quality, and disabled highest quality, where m0NESY even gave us a look at his audio setup as well. Pretty similar overall, but there is a few visibility changes, especially with the different filtering used for textures. Donk uses trilinear, which creates a sharper image, while m0NESY seems to be using bilinear for a slight performance boost. We also have a look at CS2 major winner w0nderful and his settings from his stream, plus Thor, who has a bunch of different player settings. w0nderful has boost player contrast enabled, vsync disabled, nvidia reflex disabled, MSAA 8x, global shadows very high, all model textures are on low, bilinear low, disabled, quality, and disabled. I put each of these pro player settings to the test with an FPS benchmark, but we still have a few other players to go through. This video is partnered with SkinPlace, the easiest way for you to cash out your skins, as once you sign in and pick the items you want to sell, you just choose from different delivery methods. Once you pick the one you like and click receive money, it won't be long until you see the payment in your account. All you need to do is use code WATER for an extra 3% when you cash out your skins. They even have a bonus system, so the more you sell, the more you earn. Check out SkinPlace today. w0nderful also showed off his audio settings with a crisp profile, 100% isolation, and yes to perspective. Now, Thor has shared other pro player video settings like elige, which has one of the most surprising settings for a pro. He has boost player contrast enabled, vsync disabled, reflex enabled, anti-aliasing is 4x, global shadows high, model textures on high, filtering is on 4x, high shader detail, high particle detail, median ambient occlusion, quality, and disabled. So unlike other pro players who may focus on the most FPS with the highest competitive advantage, elige would rather have some higher settings. There were some other pro player settings which were collected, but when you really narrow down the most common settings out of the 25 pros, it was boost player contrast enabled, nvidia reflex enabled, anti-aliasing 4x, high global shadows with low model textures, bilinear filtering, low shaders and particle detail with ambient occlusion disabled, HDR quality, and disabled highest quality for super resolution. A few things to point out is that pros, when using nvidia reflex, just have it enabled, and it's not on all the way with enabled plus boost. The setting that seems to change the most around each pro's setup is the texture filtering. A bunch of pros use trilinear, others use bilinear, and there's even pros using 4x. This is all about how good the game looks versus how smooth it runs, but pros are also split on ambient occlusion. Around half of the players had it on, while the other half had it on either medium or high, as they are probably aware of the slight advantages this setting gives in specific locations. Other than this though, most players just focus on getting the highest frames possible and making sure the game feels best for them, which is why there is usually a few small differences in each player's setting. Like Niko, who last month also shared his settings on stream, who had disabled player boost, vsync disabled, 4x MSAA, high shadows, low model details, trilinear filtering, low, medium ambient occlusion, quality, disabled highest quality, and nvidia reflex off. A bit similar to his teammate m0NESY, but he runs 8x bilinear and high ambient occlusion instead. So while there is some video settings that change for personal preference, there is the few that every pro uses, like high or very high shadows, simply because they offer one of the biggest gameplay advantages in terms of settings for CS2. With dynamic shadows on, it lets you see enemy shadows, but then with global shadows on high or very high, it increases the distance of you being able to see these shadows, offering another gameplay advantage. You'll also notice most players run a high anti-aliasing mode, whether that's 4x or 8x, even though it will hurt their FPS. They do this because this setting, the higher it is, the better they can see through graded objects. The thing is, when you look at pro player settings from the start of CS2, many of them have straight up changed, like how most players used to have nvidia reflex disabled, simply because it wasn't working properly in Source 2, which is why I wanted to cover updated settings for some of these players, especially with recent updates where Valve is recommending players to use vsync, gsync, and reflex together, but it seems like pros are choosing not to. But that is also them playing at the highest level with some of the best equipment. Hopefully Valve continues to update the settings to give us more options optimizing the game, especially as lower end PCs still struggle for CS2. Which, if that's you and you're looking for the highest possible frame rate, you might want to consider turning down some of the commonly used settings by pro players like high ambient occlusion or 8x MSAA. You can test out what anti-aliasing works best for you by just placing bots around B-site vertigo. You'll notice each option has an impact on your visibility and your performance. What are your settings looking like now that Valve has made updates to them? Have you started using reflex? And if you are, what about boost? Or even the triple vsync gsync combo? Valve is recommending nvidia reflex, vsync, and gsync for smoother gameplay, which could be a good option to try. The truth is, the best settings for you will just depend on your specific hardware and preferences. While some pros focus on raw FPS with low textures, some value visual clarity. It's all about finding the balance between performance and visibility that feels best for you. I tried out each of these pro player settings in-game with the FPS benchmarks and had these results. The settings prioritizing raw FPS achieved the highest frames, but obviously the game didn't look as good as, let's say, Elige's settings, which offered a good balance between performance and visuals. Make sure you subscribe to stay updated on all CS2 news.